Hello. I thought I'd bring you something a little different for Remembrance Sunday. So today I shall be reading some first-hand accounts of ghosts and supernatural occurrences from the Great War. These stories were submitted to the Daily News in 1926 and published, as far as I can ascertain, by Fleetgate Publications in 1927. Whether these are ghosts, psychic projections in times of distress, or plain old coincidences, I leave to you to decide, and I look forward to reading your comments. You can find the rest of the publication at Project Gutenberg as ebook 76814. I'll leave a link below the video in the crypt. Ghosts in the Great War. Number 1. A pal in life and death. My pal and I joined the army on the 21st day of September 1914. My mother's last words to me were, "Be a man and do your duty. If God spares you to come back to me, I'll be proud of you, my lad." I was the only son. My pal heard her words and said, "Cheer up, we will come back. England expects every man to do his duty." My pal was a soldier from head to foot. When duty called, he was always ready. Fear never entered his head. Night and day we were never parted. Side by side we fought for 2 long years, and I'm sure his thoughts were always that England did expect every man to do his duty. He was shot dead at my feet on the 5th of October 1916. If he could have spoken to me, I'm sure his last words would have been, "Thank God, I have done my duty." Broken-hearted through the loss of my pal, I did my best to carry on, although my nerves were shattered, and fear was always in my heart. I was a messenger and had to carry messages from the firing line to headquarters. 3 weeks after the death of my pal, we were on the Somme. Our division went over the top, and we fought our way forward all day until darkness stopped our advance. My captain handed me a message and said, "Go back to headquarters with this as quick as possible." It was a lovely moonlight night, and as I ran forward, bullets and shells were flying everywhere. I don't know whether it was the sight of dead men that lay around or the noise of the battle, but fear got the better of me. I dropped into a shell hole, but the longer I sat, the worse I got. The message, which meant so much to my comrades in the firing line, was now getting delayed. Shell after shell burst around me. I made one more attempt to go on, and as I crawled out of the shell hole, the sight I saw I shall never forget. There was my pal, standing not 2 yards away. Not in white, as most ghosts are, but dressed in his soldier's clothes. I stood there. The shock was too much for me. I could not move. But the ghost, I'm sure it was my pal, kept waving me on and pointing in the direction of the headquarters, which was about a mile away. I don't know how, but I moved on, and the ghost moved also. If I stopped, it stopped and waved me on. This went on until I was about 10 yards from my destination. The ghost then waved its hand as if to say goodbye and disappeared into the air. Terrified, I ran on, but with the help of my pal, the message was delivered. He had helped me do my duty in life, and he had still aided me, though dead. Portsmouth. When war broke out, my brother was amongst those who answered the call. One night, I saw my mother, who had died just before the war, standing at the foot of my bed holding out her arms and looking straight past me. I turned my head and saw my brother come through the closed door and walk into my mother's arms, and they both disappeared. At the time, I thought, how could a living being walk through a closed door? The next morning, I received the news that my brother had been killed. Derby. One night in April 1917, I was in bed asleep when I woke with a start and distinctly heard my fiancé call in a distressed voice, "Frank, oh Frank," Frank being my nickname. It was so real, I jumped out of bed, and going to the window, I saw him, sun helmet, kit and all, in the garden beneath my window, as clear as I have ever seen him in reality. I turned to go back to bed and have a good cry, feeling sure something tragic had happened, when my sister came in from another room and said, "I felt certain I heard Charlie call you. What can it mean?" There was not much sleep for either of us that night, and not hearing from him for several days, I feared the worst. However, one day at the office, I received a wire asking me to meet him on the London train due in that evening. When I had an opportunity, I asked, "What were you doing on the 3rd of April?" He took out his diary and gave it to me to read, and this was written at the date of my experience. "Submarine sighted. Lifebelts. What luck if we go under without a fight after 2.5 years away from home. Frank, oh Frank, God bless you." And he admitted what a narrow squeak they had had that night in the Mediterranean. One evening during the late war, I sat reading when I felt someone blow on my neck. I was just about to turn round when I heard a scream coming from upstairs. I went to see the reason, and to my surprise, I saw my little girl sitting up in bed, terrified. I took her in my arms and asked her what was the matter. She still looked afraid of something and said, "Look, Mamma," and pointing to a corner of the room, added, "There's Daddy. A man up that tree has shot him. I saw him do it, and now my Daddy is dead." She fainted in my arms as she repeated, "Dead." I ran to get a drink to revive her, thinking it was just a nightmare she'd had, and eventually she fell asleep. The following week, I had news that my husband had been killed in action. On making inquiries, I found he had been shot by a sniper who was posted in a tree, and at the same hour as he had appeared to my little girl. Goodbye. A few years ago, I was spending a holiday with a friend who lives in a quiet village in the Lake District. We were returning home one evening from a neighbouring village, and our path led us across an old stone bridge spanning a swiftly flowing stream. Here I could not hear the voice of my friend because of the deafening roar of the waterfall, which was only a short distance from the bridge. By the side of the waterfall was a powder mill, where most of the inhabitants of the village earned their livelihood. After we'd passed through the avenue leading from the bridge, my friend related to me a very strange experience she had whilst passing over the same bridge one evening during the Great War. Looking towards the waterfall, she saw, to her amazement and fear, the figure of her husband, dressed in white and waving his hand to her as if in farewell. Almost at the same time, her husband's father, who was then at work in the powder mill, saw the same figure of his son, waving his hand to him in a similar manner. The following week, my friend received the sad news that her husband had fallen in action, and on making inquiries, discovered that he had been killed on the same day and at the same hour she had seen him standing on the waterfall, bidding her goodbye.